Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, if you do enjoy the video that you came here to watch, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. It really does help my audience grow. It really does help this channel grow. It means more than you realize. So go ahead, hit that little red button. Also, remember, full episodes of the Aaron Torres podcast, wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Now, here is the video that you came here for.
Switch gears, but stay on a topic that we have talked about quite a bit this time of year, and that is, of course, the college football coaching carousel. Coaching carousel, there are currently 6 Power 5 jobs open: Wisconsin and Nebraska in the Big Ten, Auburn in the SEC, Georgia Tech in the ACC, and Colorado and Arizona State in the Pac-12. But what I would say about the coaching carousel, and I said it in a segment on Monday, it's about to be go time with the coaching carousel. Remember, not only do we have the early signing period in December, we now have the transfer portal reopening. Players cannot enter the portal until the Monday after those conference championship games. And so because of it, all of these schools are going to want to get a coach in place ASAP, ideally the Sunday or Monday after the conference or after the regular season ends. So we're literally talking about 10 days potentially between now and when most of these big time jobs will be filled. So the question now, what is the latest? And on Monday, we talked a little bit about Auburn. And today, I want to talk about the other super marquee job that is available, and that is the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Because a few weeks ago, we talked about the fact that Bruce Feldman said that Nebraska was down to potentially 4 coaching candidates. And on Tuesday, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic put out a very interesting piece that makes one thing apparent. If Matt Rhule, the former Carolina Panthers head coach, is not the favorite for the job, he is pretty darn close. The exact quote from Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, if he is not at the top of the list, he is near. And then because it is silly season in college football, he mentioned a plane owned by a big-time company that contributes quite a bit of money to Nebraska athletics was seen flying out of Omaha this week to go to Charlotte. And so I bring it up because if Matt Rhule isn't the guy, he's pretty darn close. And I think we have to set ourselves up for the reality that in the coming week, Matt Rhule could be named the next head coach in Nebraska. And so I want to talk about it. I want to talk about what's realistic, what's not. Is he the right fit? Is he not? And break it down into 4 things. Is he the right fit? Why he would take it, why he might not take it, and most importantly, what that guy could do at Nebraska. Now, in terms of if he's the right fit, I'll say this, Nebraska fans, I've seen a lot of public pushback from Nebraska fans saying they're not sure if they want Matt Rhule. And I'll be blunt, I just don't get it. Now, listen, maybe there is that sitting head coach like Lincoln Riley who left Oklahoma for LSU, like Brian Kelly who left Oklahoma for USC, like Brian Kelly who left Notre Dame for LSU. Maybe that guy exists, and maybe Trev Alberts is knocking on those doors. And if you can get that guy, then 1,000% go get him. But I don't think you're going to get that A++ guy that is already a sitting head coach, probably at the Power 5 level. And so amongst the guys that are available, I think Matt Rhule is going to be awesome if he gets a Nebraska job, okay? This is a guy. I think Nebraska right now just needs a culture rebuild, right? Everything is there. Fan base support, infrastructure, facilities, resources, NIL, all that good stuff. They just need a guy to kind of rebuild the actual football part, and that's what Matt Rhule has spent most of his career doing. Remember, this was a guy that got to Temple about a decade ago. In year 1, won just 1 game. By year 3, his team won 10 games, and the following year, they won another 10. Then he goes to Baylor, and keep in mind, Baylor was as bad of a football program as there was at the Power 5 level at that point. And when he takes over at Baylor, they win 1 game in his first year. And then by year 3, how about this? By year 3, another, not just 10 wins, 11 wins and a trip to the conference championship game. I think people forget this now. By year 3 at Baylor, this guy had Baylor playing to go to the college football playoff. It's easy to forget now, but they were 11-1 going to the Big 12 championship game. If they win the Big 12 championship game, they're playing to they go to the college football playoff to play LSU. Now, Jalen Hurts in Oklahoma won, but it doesn't change the fact that by year 3 in a Power 5 school, he wins 11 games, goes to a conference championship. And what I love about it was he built that thing from the ground up as well. Made some savvy coaching hires, including Joey McGuire, who's currently the head coach at Texas Tech. Also had a great eye for talent. A lot of the guys that came in were not highly recruited, but guess what? They were part of that team that won another Big 12 title, or a Big 12 title, I really should say, for Baylor last year. Obviously, that was the team that went to the Sugar Bowl under Dave Aranda. Well, most of those guys were recruited by Matt Rhule and his staff. And so the idea that he's not the right fit, well, if he's not the right fit, who is, Nebraska fans? Who is? The question now, does it make sense for him? I understand why Nebraska is interested, but would he be interested in Nebraska? To answer the question, there are a lot of reasons I think he would be. One, I just said it. Everything is in place for that team to win. I know it's a tougher job. I know it's not 1995. Nebraska fans know this as well as I do. I don't think most Nebraska fans want it to be, I mean, they would love for it to be 1995. I think they're realistic that era of football is probably not coming back. They just want to get back to respectability, right? And then we can talk about, let's get a couple 9-10 win seasons. Then we'll start talking about 1995. And so it makes sense for Nebraska. And I do think in terms of the jobs available, this one probably makes the most sense for Matt Rhule. Not going to Georgia Tech, not going to Colorado, not going to Arizona State. And Auburn, I'll be blunt, I just don't think it really fits who he is. Midwest guy, kind of tough physical football. And I know he was at Texas, but played at Penn State, kind of has those ties. And I think this one makes a lot more sense for him than, say, Auburn. The way that, by the way, there's a lot of people that Auburn makes a lot more sense for them than Nebraska would. Hugh Freeze comes to mind there. Maybe Jamie Chadwell comes to mind. So the point being, this is the spot where if he wants to get back into college football this year, this is the one that I think makes a lot of sense for him. The question, of course, does he want to get back into college football? And that's where it gets interesting. Keep in mind, this was a guy that was fired by the Carolina Panthers and is owed $40 million in buyout money. Now, that buyout money would be offset by anything that he is making as a college football or as a coach somewhere else. So if he goes wherever and they're paying him XYZ, that's deducted from what the Carolina Panthers owe him. But it doesn't change the fact that he's going to make a lot of money not coaching football if he's not in a rush to get back into coaching going into next season. And so the question becomes, one, does he want to wait? Is Nebraska the right job for him? And then I think more importantly too, like we could have another crazy coaching carousel next year. I don't think Jimbo Fisher is getting fired this year, despite what the internet wants to tell you, despite what Paul Feinbaum wants to say again and again to get attention. I just don't think it's happening. And if he's right and I'm wrong, then credit to him. But I don't think Texas A&M is opening this year. I do think if Texas A&M has a season like this next year, that's when I think the serious conversation about Jimbo Fisher starts. I don't think you can let this keep going the way that it is. Oklahoma, Brent Venables, you can already see it's interesting. I did a video earlier this week on YouTube, and the answers on Venables were pretty split. I think more of the Oklahoma fan base is concerned than publicly wants to admit it. A lot of them are playing it cool. It's all Lincoln Riley's fault. No, I think there's a lot of Oklahoma fans that are realistic, saying like, this might not be the guy. Well, no, Oklahoma's currently 5-5. If they're 5-5 at this time next year, heading into the SEC in about a year after that, they're going to have some really tough conversations about Brent Venables. Steve Sarkisian, don't think he's going to be in trouble. But listen, just took another loss to another good team at home, doesn't win the big games. I think it's worth having a conversation about Steve Sarkisian. Where are we a year from now? So the point I'm trying to make, Matt Rhule could just look around and say, Oklahoma might be open a year from now. Texas A&M might be open a year from now. Texas might be open a year from now. Maybe I just wait for one of those. But if he does take the job, let me wrap by saying this. I think in the new era of college football, I think he could crush it in Nebraska. And I think, frankly, the right guy could crush it in Nebraska, because what I keep saying, the conversation, I think we all need to change our mindset and our idea of what success will look like 5 years from now in college football. Now, the biggest blue bloods at USC, at Ohio State, at Alabama, yeah, it's going to be national championship or bust. I get that. At Georgia, as long as Kirby Smart's there. But I think for that next tier of programs, here's the bottom line. The bottom line is, if you can finish third in the SEC, if you can finish third in the Big Ten, you are probably going to make a 12-team playoff. And so if you look at the history of the Big Ten, whether it is Wisconsin, whether it is Iowa, Minnesota in a year or two, they all would have qualified for the college football playoff. The year Minnesota won 11 games, probably would have made the college football playoff. And so the idea that the right coach with what Nebraska affords cannot get Nebraska to be the third best team in the Big Ten, even with USC coming, I don't think it's crazy or unrealistic to think that. Keep in mind, what did I say? First of all, the transfer portal, I think, is a game changer for a place like Nebraska. Because at the end of the day, guys can talk about this, that, the other thing. They want a pathway to the NFL where they can compete at the highest level. Well, come to Nebraska, you're going to compete at an insanely high level in the Big Ten at a place that's going to give you every resource needed to play in the NFL. Even in the years where Scott Frost struggled on the field, he was pumping out pros. Nebraska had 2-3 guys drafted last year. I forget all the details. But Nebraska had guys that were drafted by the NFL. And so with the transfer portal, I think you're going to get that second tier of guys that they get to Alabama and it doesn't quite work out. They get to LSU and it doesn't quite work out. By the way, speaking of LSU, keep Mickey Joseph on staff, whoever gets hired, keep Mickey Joseph, whatever you do. But you look at the current setup of Nebraska, and I've said it since the day Scott Frost got fired. Starting quarterback this year until he got hurt, Casey Thompson came from Texas, former 4-star recruit. Top wide receiver, Trey Palmer, came from LSU, former 4-star recruit. Second leading wide receiver, Marcus Washington, came from Texas, former 4-star recruit. Best defensive player, O'Shawn Mathis, came from TCU, leads the team in sacks. And so the idea that you can upgrade the talent with the portal, that is going to be a thing. And I think Nebraska is going to be a nice landing spot for the kids where it doesn't quite work out at LSU, at Ohio State, at USC, at Michigan, at places like that. And then they're still going to get a 5-star here and there. And they're still going to have success in the high school ranks as well. By the way, Scott Frost signed top 25 classes, signed classes that did not result in wins, but should have resulted in more during his time at Nebraska. So you can still recruit at about a level right behind maybe Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. And then I do believe the portal is going to help a ton. NIL is obviously going to be a factor. We know the program is very taken care of. And so the idea that if you get the right coach, you can't finish in the top 3 in the Big Ten every couple of years and make a college football playoff, I think it's there. To me, if I'm Nebraska, go get Matt Rhule. Get it done. If he wants to coach, he has to be the guy, and it's going to be fascinating to see if they can close him out these next couple weeks.